So my name's Stephen. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Cincinnati. I study with Yenny. And Yenny invited me into this space because she knows that, I study Middle Eastern politics, but also I am a practicing Christian. And so she asked if I'd be able to come in and have some conversation with you all. And I'm very glad that you all welcomed me into this space. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And Arzon, maybe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. My English very bad. I will be more listen you.
Yeah, it's okay. But yeah,
And
maybe,
your name.
My name Anzor.
Anzor is from Ukraine. No, if you might know,
I'm from Ukraine right now. I'm Georgia.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
Aaron in Russian. My nick.
And also your background, Anzor. What is your religious background? And then
My father is priest, Orthodox Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Ukraine map. Now, if you can tell us, in what province are you living now in Ukraine? Where is the area?
Right now I'm living in Georgia, country Georgia.
Georgia. Oh, so not in Ukraine.
Not in Ukraine.
Yeah, but from in Ukraine, where are you originally from in Ukraine?
Lugansk область, eastern.
Eastern part of
East.
Ukraine.
Mhm.
Oh, so in the border to Russia.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Сосед, да, получается. My neighbor is Russia.
Your neighbor is Russia. Yeah, very close to Russia. Is Donetsk, Luhansk?
No, Lugansk.
Luhansk, so very close to Russia. Yeah. Okay. Then we have also Ilham. Ilham, please.
Hi, my name is Ilham. I am friends with Yenny and also Sufyan and Ali. I am a UC graduate. I have dual degrees in Arabic and also neuroscience. Doing my master's also at UC. I don't know anything interesting about me other than being Moroccan, which you will hear a lot about. What else? I am Muslim, born and raised in Morocco. That's it. That's
okay. So we have Adrian, please.
Okay. Hello everyone. Hi, especially Stephen, Liham. This is, I think, the first time for me to see you all. My name is Adrian. I am friend of Yenny originally, and also he met me, introduced me to Ali, and then I coming to the US at the same program as Yenny, Fulbright from Indonesia, but I'm here in Connecticut. And somehow I got connected to Anzor's wife, who also in a Fulbright program from Ukraine. That's why we get to know each other, and then that's why she introduced me to her husband, which is Anzor right now with you all. And yeah, that's how we are all connected. And then nice to see you all and then have a nice discussion.
So we just start our discussion, okay? Maybe I was actually really interested to hear from Aaron. If you feel like you don't want to explain this, let me know. But I really want to know if I might the reason you live in Georgiano for working or because of war.
Because of war.
Because of war. So many people from Ukraine now moving to other country, but yeah.
Many people.
yes, it's true.
It's true.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Скажи, что твой дом был.
My house is destroyed.
Oh. All your family is living in Georgia now because your house was.
No, my family lives in Moscow. No.
Oh, your family even moving to Russia.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So I want to talk to everyone, like, because we initiate this group first, like, because we interested in interfaith discussion, right? We see the similarities between Islam and Christian, like that's what make us forming this group first. But it's like it's coming for after several discussion, the war in Gaza. That is really something that while we discuss, we are in this interfaith discussion, we can't ignore the discussion about the war. Maybe I will ask to Stephen if for our topic today, because like as a Christian background and living in the US, what do you think the war in Gaza that is continue framing as the war between Islam and the Jews? Maybe you can Joe, you can tell us your perspective about that.
Yeah, I can answer that and any other questions. So I think it's important to start this by saying that just as like there's no one sect of Islam, there's no one sect of Christianity. And so my perspective will not speak for all Christian practitioners in the United States or in the West more broadly. And I'm gonna say, like, answer this in three ways. The first is that like the Christian movement that was in support of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital in Israel is not the part of Christianity or the denomination of Christianity that I am a part of broadly. And so I would say that the positioning of, and you might have seen this on social media, this idea that like there's just been a historical battle between Muslims and Christians all the way back to Ishmael and Isaac. And like there'll never be peace between the two, and it's always going to be a fight. And my denomination, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, does not support that interpretation. And so I think that that makes it difficult when having conversations about what do Christians support, what do they not support, because you're hearing a lot of what I would say more fundamentalist, evangelical, biblical literalist groups articulating this belief that like we have to back Israel because they're the chosen people. And they conflate the Jewish people with the state of Israel founded in 1948. And this is a problem because while I do believe we should be supporting people, period, not just Jewish or Palestinian, we should be supporting people. We should not let that support cause us to go blind to the oppression that's been occurring.
Yep.
Now, that nuance is not something that is articulated by all denominations within Christianity, but within my sect, my denomination within Christianity, we actually released a statement on Palestine and Israel back in 1989, outlining our hope for a two-state solution that both acknowledges the sovereignty of Palestinians while also acknowledging the oppression that's been committed against them by the Israeli government historically. And so this is not something my denomination within Christianity has come around to recently because of the attack on Hamas. And I think that that's indicative for me of how long this dynamic has been ongoing. That if this statement is released in 1989 about the hope for a two-state solution that acknowledges sovereignty while also acknowledging oppression and hope for wholeness between both parties, then we shouldn't act like this all just happened because Hamas came to the scene in 2006 and everything went wild. So even now, within Christianity, it's divided. You'll see some groups that'll say we have to support Israel, carte blanche, no questions asked. And then you'll have more like groups, like denominations like I'm a part of, that will say, we should not be supporting oppression of any kind, and we should not be supporting violence of any kind. And that is both inclusive of Hamas, but also inclusive of the Israeli government. And so when I look at dynamics going on in Israel and Palestine, I see that it's a culmination of histories of problems, not just problems committed by the Israeli government, but also problems from the UN, but also from the United States involvement in the space. And historically, the people that have paid the brunt of that cost are Palestinians, but also low-level civilians within Israel as well. And so even now, the head of our denomination, my denomination, released a statement hoping for peace, and calling for Lutherans to pray for peace within Israel and Palestine, and referenced again our social statement on Israel-Palestine, as well as our social statement on an end to war internationally. And so that's a broad way to answer it, but that's how I perceived this, is that like in our understanding, we serve a God of wholeness and healing and liberation, and the one who sides with the oppressed. And in that way, we cannot justify supporting oppressive systems anywhere. Be those Christian, Jewish, Muslim, any form, no matter the religious background.
Thank you so much for Stephen. Any of you want to ask question to anyone, please?
I have a question regarding the Old Testament, right? So you as a Christian do believe the Old Testament?
Yes.
Okay, so last month, I believe Netanyahu, president of Israel, he mentioned that the people in Gaza are like the Amalek, which means in Arabic the giants.
Yep.
And according to the Bible, they have to eradicate everyone. Do you think that's a reason, from their perspective, that can be fueled by the words of the Old Testament to the violence, to convince the army to do like that?
Yeah, I think this is something I've been thinking about recently. Thank you for your question. I think the Israeli government's been using religious language a lot in its attack against Gaza and against the Palestinian population more broadly. Recently, they created an artificial intelligence targeting system that they called the gospel. And then in the same sentence referred to it as a mass assassination factory. And so I think part of it is to justify its actions to the population within Israel, but also to cater in hopes that they get support from Western populations, specifically Christian or Jewish populations. And I don't think it's justifiable. I don't think you can say, oh, we're using the term the Amalek and this equivalency, and therefore we're justified in our violence. I think it's performance. I think we can say these things to make it appear like it's justifiable and see if people will get on and support us. I don't personally think it's justifiable. And I think that language of that nature seeks to dehumanize populations and seeks to say they're different than us. They are juxtaposed to us. And it often goes to the point of saying, if we can make a comparison like the Amalek, the next comparison is, oh, they had to be killed because they are evil. And so then we start to make false binaries where we say there is difference, and because of this difference, they are like this and we are like this. And then we can extend that further to say, oh, they had to die so we could live. And I don't think that that is not in my faith practice how we believe God views the world. And two, any justification through biblical interpretation or for the Jewish population interpretation of the Torah or the Talmud that says we must eradicate populations and we have to kill them in order for us to survive, I think is interpreting those religious texts to support human agendas. I don't think it's interpreting those texts to do the will of God or engage with others after the pattern of God, or the teachings of prophets. Thank you for the question, though. I've been thinking about it a lot, and with that statement being made, but also in reference to the new technologies being used, and much of it does lean into Jewish and Christian theological concepts or terminology in an effort to justify And I think it's
Right, right.
problematic,
Yeah.
extremely problematic.
I see like let's say for example in Islam nothing says that, even in the whole Quran, the whole Hadith, nothing says to eradicate everyone. In
Mhm.
Islam there are rules in the war. But let's say like for example, if an official from Islamic countries said something like that, do you think that all over the media and people will start saying Muslims are terrorists? But now like Netanyahu said it, like it's like they're trying to cover it. Even the Democrats, the liberals,
Mhm.
everyone
Mhm.
trying to cover, right? So do you think that that's a big problem, like in the double standards?
Oh, I think this is a huge problem. Thank you so much. And Yanni knows this. We've had multiple conversations about this. You joined the call a little after I did a bit of introduction. So I study specifically sub-state groups, jihadist groups, and I study mostly ISIS and Hamas.
Oh,
And the rhetoric linked to these two, one, is problematic because it creates linkages that aren't real. But two, it's that, oh, because these groups are in the media, this must be what all Muslim people believe or practice or support, which is just not true. But I think the way that we talk about it is laced in Islamophobia and xenophobia. And if we can find one person, so like if we can find statements of like al-Baghdadi from ISIS and say, well, he calls for the eradication of Western governments, that must be what all Muslim people want. I think in the United States and in Western countries specifically, that becomes the face of Islam. Even though it's not true, it's not real, it's not true. It is one person's perception, but it becomes the image of all. And I'm thinking about this in relation to the United States, where we had we have multiple people who are Christian and are part of hate groups, but they're articulated as like wayward, or they're not actually Christian. And the media will call them fanatics or lunatics or things of that nature. But the same generosity is not afforded to Islamic populations who more often than not do not support these groups, but they don't get the media. And I don't think they necessarily will, because it serves the narrative, especially now with the US's historical presence within the Middle East, to say, oh, these people are violent or these people support this figure or these groups. And I think it's problematic. It's very deeply embedded in my research, and I think it's not new. And I think that with the US's support for Israel that's still ongoing, part of that is because the US population and within the government, Democrat and Republican, have latched onto this idea that like we must fight, we'll say Hamas, but I think what we're actually articulating is we must fight Islam in many ways. And people won't say that, but I think that's embedded in a lot of people's decision making, is that, oh, this is different, this is strange, this is in opposition to what I believe, therefore, instead of understanding it or engaging with it, we can just get rid of it.
right. Like it's like the Japanese kamikaze idea of they have to remove the idea of like because that idea of ideology is very dangerous from their perspective. Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with
Sometimes in a simple way, I think maybe I offer simplify it, but then I see the similarities between this extremists in every like groups. I would say that the verses quoted by the Netanyahu, for me, it's form of Jewish extremism, and then
Mhm.
the ISIS kind of idea, jihadists, and all the things is also another form of Islamist extremism. But then the same with Christian, I don't know the one in the south, Triple K. I don't know what's the name
Mhm.
of
Yeah,
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, all
KKK.
this, that's yeah, and it's so unfortunate. I think this idea, especially for what happened again. I try to distinguish with the peaceful people, with the Israeli, and then the peaceful Palestinian, Jewish. I have no problem with Jewish, but then it's coming when it comes to this any extremism. Yeah, that's when I even in Islam I would say the same. Back then in my country, 2002 bomb in Bali. done by the Muslims, it's clearly extremism. And then we, as a government, we try to counter the terrorists, and then they're all arrested, and then it's done. But then, yeah, it's just so unfortunate what happened right now. It's just being supported by especially the US. I don't know. I feel so unfortunate right now.
My question is to all of you guys, what determines whether that person, group, cult, whatever you want to call it, is a terrorist or not? Because at this point, I feel like every single cult, every single, I don't know, sect of extreme religion is a terrorist group by definition, because they all like want to protect their ideology or their lifestyle or their beliefs or whatever, because KKK, they just want their own people. Zionists, they want their own little sect of people. And then like Hamas, they just want their own Palestinians. Doesn't really matter if you're Christian or Muslim, they just want Palestinians. So my question is to anyone at this point, what is the definition of a terrorist group? Like, how can you explain to me what a terrorist group is?
Yeah.
Seeing that all of these people exist.
You want to explain that, Stephen?
I can. Yeah, and if anyone wants to tackle it before, go for it. Yenny is asking me because Yenny and I've had this conversation multiple times.
For me, terrorist term is becoming into politics right now, especially right in the situation. It's hard to distinguish, but for the like what happened, Hamas and Palestinian, I cannot tell right away, because there's an issue of the resistance there, so I couldn't. I cannot really tell. For example, in an Islamic
Yes.
world or ideology, what I can say literally terrorists is what happened in my country when some of extremists try to blow up some cafe in Bali, which the country is ruled by the Muslims. The troops, the police are Muslims majority, but then they are still doing it because of what they're doing is not according to Islam. It's kafir and all these things. That's what I call terrorism. What I can say, I cannot tell with other religion, because I'm not sure what the understanding is. And especially for Hamas and Palestinian, it's a little bit hard because there is a spirit of resistance over there, and then some resistance definitely in political way it's viewed as a terrorist for the other groups. So that's why specifically for Hamas and Palestinian, I cannot really distinguish between whether it's terrorism or the resistance act. So it's really hard. But what I can say, what happened in my country, 2002, 2000, that's the act of terrorism.
Yeah. Before get back to Stephen, I want to mention a little bit when I met my supervisor. She told me that she actually had previously supervised 2 Palestinian students, and she went to Israel, and I was like, when she described how he see Israel and the research, her 2 students research that about the Palestinian living in Israel. So I was like, ask her, because I really believe people who believe in God at that time, right? So people who believe in God will aim for peace. So I asked her directly. So I said like, but a religious Jewish will not hurt a Palestinian, right? So I heard like that. No, she said they are very extremists. That's what she said. That I quote from her. They are very extremists. They really think that Palestinians don't have the same right. That's what I quote from
Jewish
her.
or Zionist, or I don't.
So are they considered as terrorists then?
She didn't mention they are terrorists, but like they don't like Palestinians. something like that. So yeah, maybe Stephen can add.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Thank you so much for asking, Abham. I think the first thing I would say, like, just as the academic, is if you want to read more about it, there's a piece called Defining Terrorism. And I believe it's called Is One Man's Terrorism Terrorist Another Man's Freedom Fighter, or something of that nature, by Boaz Gaynor, which was written almost 20 years ago, because this question's been around a long time. And it was one of the first pieces I read that got me interested in this topic. And I would say, like, I think there's a lot of theory around what terms you use. I don't use the term terrorist to describe, like, Hamas. I use terrorist to describe groups oftentimes not affiliated with religious ideology. Because I don't think we should be equating groups like PIJ, Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS with groups like the Proud Boys in the United States. I don't think there's enough similarity because of the religious component. But terrorism usually is linked to specific acts. And so it's like these groups commit acts of terror. We define terror this way. Usually the terms that I use when it comes to groups in the Middle East are like Islamist, jihadist, or whatever term they give to themselves. Like if they say we are this, I'm just like, well, you've already told me, so I'll just use your word. But I think to the root of that question, which I think is really important, and you can tell me you're way off base, is the power dynamic and who gets to say what is a terrorist group, what is not, who gets to call it this and who doesn't. And there's a lot of work on the power of labeling, because if some groups say this is terrorist or this is not, then others can't refute it. They just have to go along with it and say, you must be right because you have more power or authority in this space. And in the international political realm, usually that is Western countries that get to determine it, or the UN gets to determine it. And so I think in this case, who gets to determine what Hamas is not actually the people in Palestine, but it's the people watching what's going on with the people of Palestine. And that is why we could say that, like, oh, Hamas is a terrorist organization, even though I wouldn't use that word, but like that's how it's projected in the media. Hamas is a terrorist organization, but the KKK is just, like, at one point in time, it was viewed as a political movement in the United States and didn't make it into the terrorist registry until the 1990s. Mm-hmm. So we could go, Hamas was identified as a terrorist organization in 1997, but we had to wait decades before the KKK was put onto the terrorist watch list for the United States. And we could also even look in the United States and say, okay, but the Black Panthers were put on within a decade of existing as a terrorist organization by the US government. So there's a racialized component, but also the power dynamic of who gets to say, and then the rest has to follow. And I would say when it comes into international dynamics, really whatever the UN says, and arguably whatever like Western countries say, is what the label gets ascribed, whether that's true or not. And I think that often reflects a lack of understanding of dynamics going on the ground.
I don't know how to say this, but it's just saying that dependent on the higher power, which is usually the Western countries, they could do no wrong as long as it's them. It's not like another country that's like, I don't know how to explain this, but it's just, it doesn't make sense. Like the whole term terrorist doesn't make sense to me, because it's just, they're just saying that since you're different than us and you believe in a different belief than us, that means you're a terrorist. Why can't we just say that it's a group that is trying to defend their ideology?
I think you can.
Why can't we, like, at least, I don't know, have a definition for terrorism as somebody who doesn't believe in the same thing that other people believe in?
I think
think
that's not the what terrorism is. Like actually, like the actual word is terrorism simply means like a group of people using power to kill innocent people to force the agenda on those people. So that's what
it sounds a
terrorism
lot
is.
like United States of America, United Kingdom. It sounds a lot like other European countries. I mean, they force their ideologies on so many other countries. They even like colonize. How about we just say every single colonizer is a terrorist? Why didn't we even say that about what's his name? The guy with the little mustache. What's his name?
Hitler.
Hitler. Yes. Why didn't we say that
The
about
guy
him? I
with
mean,
little mustache.
he I forgot his name. Um, why didn't we say that about him? I mean, he literally killed so many other Jewish people just simply because they were Jewish. Why didn't we say that he was a terrorist, but we rather said that he's what is it?
Are you saying we
There's a
called him a
word for
dictator?
dictator, right? We just said that he's
Dictator.
a dictator instead of a terrorist. I mean, he was forcing his own beliefs on other people by killing so many other people that didn't believe in the same thing he believed in.
Yeah.
I don't know. Simply because he
Anyone,
was,
yeah, anyone who does wrong,
European.
regardless of religion, any organization who does wrong is a terrorist. Also, Stephen said something about Hezbollah and Hamas. I can say that Hezbollah is a terrorist group because they have done something. They have killed innocent people in Syria because they have a lot of things. I can say that the Houthi people in Yemen were that have done some terrorism in the past in Syria too, affiliation. But when it comes to Hamas, it's they have not according to their actions, they have not done something like the other groups that affiliates to terrorism, which simply taking care of the hostages and doing what they want, like resisting the occupation. So we have to make a little bit of difference there, from that perspective. Hamas people were people under siege for 70 years, and they are the ancestors of those of people who flee from 48 in Nakba. It's like a reaction, and they accept the two-state solution. Uh, I say this because I do understand Arabic and I do follow them and see how do they think and how do they uh, treat people, and I try to see if anything they do wrong, I disagree with them. But overall, the movement is like a resistant movement because that's what the Hamas says. Hamas is uh, the movement of Islamic resistance. That's what Hamas is. It's like a resistance, and yeah, we can argue that the other groups, ISIS is what is the worst group that ever to exist. They have killed so many people, but there's no comparison with them. I would compare ISIS with what Israel is doing. That's like both have the same thing with the same coin. But I wouldn't compare ISIS with Hamas. That's a big difference. Hamas take care of people and they try not to kill innocent people, but Israel tries, doesn't care about innocent people. So I think Israel is the very definition of terrorism in the 21st century, according to what they do. And
Can we talk about why does the US has veto in this whole scenario? Like I'm not really I don't really understand why they do have it. Like
Okay. I can explain that.
okay.
It goes all the way back to World War II.
Okay.
Who are the permanent members of the UN Security Council? Are those that were the big countries on the winner side of World War II. And so when the UN was established, 5 countries were given veto power as permanent members. The United States is one of them. And so any of those 5 countries can veto a resolution through the UN Security Council and not allow it to go to the floor for the General Assembly to have a vote. And what's unique is they had veto power, but then the General Assembly voted and stated that basically the UN Security Council was not actually upholding the UN Charter and not seeking peace internationally. And then the General Assembly voted overwhelmingly in support of saying the UN Security Council was failing, which was kind of an indictment on the United States government, which led President Biden to make a statement like immediately after that was saying basically we don't support Israelis' aims or the Israeli government's aims and the way they're going about this, and basically a bit of chastisement for Netanyahu. But that's all it resulted in. But that's why there's the veto power, and it could have been France, the UK, the United States, China, or Russia. But the US is the one who I think most frequent, the US and the Russian Federation are the most frequent users of the veto.
Yeah, actually, what you said maybe about 337A resolution that passed recently, but it's like that resolution have no binding, but the UN Council resolution have binding. So why do you think even that 153 countries have voted for the invoke of the 337A resolution, but nothing can be happened? So what is the function of UN in that case? That what the UN can do after this, you think?
If it's not binding, then the UN's function is just it's a performance. It's just to say, this is where we stand as a majority of countries in the world. If it's not binding. If it's binding, it means action has to follow, and therefore there's accountability.
Yep.
But if nothing's binding, you can say, we support this action, we want these things to happen. And as long as you can prove you're making efforts towards achieving whatever goal is stated in that resolution, then it's fine.
Okay, you said 5 countries has vetoed or have vetoed. What if like 2 of them are up against one another? One is saying yes, one is saying no. What's gonna happen? Like what's the next move? Like what if Russia says stop, ceasefire, and then US says no, we do not stop it? How does that go in the UN? Yeah. I'm generally just curious. I don't know anything about politics.
So I can answer that. Like for that, it's like you see now is 4 countries already support the ceasefire, but only 1 country not support the ceasefire. So it's mean like even only 1 country. So yeah, it's mean cannot.
But what if it's like one on one, just one?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Every country on the UN Security Council could say we support a ceasefire, but the moment one of those 5 countries vetoes it, the resolution is killed.
Ooh, yeah, okay. Well, politics suck. I'm sorry, but I'm glad I'm not into politics.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, like it's sad, but I think like when after the 153 countries now already on one side, so it's really show who is in alienation at this moment. So it's something that maybe even it's not binding. I mean, like no one can impose anything, like the UN cannot impose anything, but this really show that's how it should be. So they cannot longer say like everyone will ask. Everyone will. Like recently we also heard like 3 hostages are still killed. Maybe more will coming because they are living in very, very difficult time now. Yeah, it's very sad to hear. But I haven't heard anything from Ali today. Do you have any question, Ali?
Thanks, Yanni. I do have a lot of questions, but the first one, just kind of related to what we were just talking about, is I'm curious what Stephen thinks is the kind of motivation of the United States. I'm a little confused on, like, I know there's the whole evangelical Christian side of things, but is it the lobbyists? Like, why? What is the root of the United States support of Israel?
Let me add something to Ali's point. The more I think about this conflict, the more I think that there's occupation in White House. I don't know. That's what I think. I don't know. There's something happened over there. So yeah, please, Stephen.
That's a great question, Ali. So I think Yanni might be talking about our shared committee member, Dr. Runyon, in conversation. And so early on, she told me, when you're thinking about politics, follow the money. And the United States has so
So
much
the
money.
politics follows where the money goes.
Yep. The US has so much money invested in Israel. Not only in the US, in the Israeli government and the electoral processes that have been ongoing there, but also in the Israeli Defense Force. And if you do a quick Google search and look at US representatives or Senate members and how many people have money that has been invested in companies that are based in Israel to operate Middle Eastern businesses, and be a part of that market, it will be astonishing. So I would say not the only thing that is swaying people's votes and perspectives, but I think a large motivator is the money that is based in Israel from US businesses and individuals within the political structure of the United States. And if you do a little bit of expansion of a search and you say, oh, well, it doesn't look like this person has funding there. Maybe their partner has funding there, or maybe one of their kids does, or someone in their family. And that was something that when I was starting doing research on this for a conference I'm presenting on in Mozambique, was really jarring. The amount of US funding that has gone into like technological developments in Israel, specifically for the Israeli Defense Force or electoral processes or things of that nature. So it's not the only motivator. I think it is a large portion of the motivator, but I think also the United States, in my opinion, kind of put its eggs in all one basket by saying our ally in the Middle East is Israel. And so we need to have a foothold there because the US's, I would say, next strongest ally in the region is Jordan, for a lot of coercive economic reasons, but we don't have to get into that right now. And once there started to be conflict on the border between Israel and Jordan following the October 7th strike, Israel won out over Jordan, and the United States hedged its bets and said, we're going to support the Israeli government because we also funded the development of their military forces and training. And so I think now it's come to the point where the relationships with other countries in the Middle East have become so damaged, or they are hanging on a thread, that the US has kind of gone all in on Israel, both for economic reasons, but because I don't know how much of an option they believe they have. I think saying we condemn Israel and the actions and all of these things, and we're going to seize our funding to this and divert it in these other directions, could work to improve relationships with other nations within the region. But instead, I think not the Israeli government, the US government has kind of said, well, we have to go full on support of Israel because we've already damaged all of these relationships and we have so much invested here, we have to continue. And so we're putting like money over literal human lives. And so that is, I would say, two chief motivators is one, the economic point, but also two, as the longer this draws out and the more they support Israel, the more damaged relationships come with other nations within the region.
I have one more follow-up question. That was really, good. Good explanation. But I'm confused on like how does everyone in government, get linked to Israel? Like you got little Joe and he's wanting to become a politician, and like how does that happen?
So it shouldn't be this way. But in order to become a politician, generally you have to have money. Because you have to be able to run a campaign, you have to be able to potentially operate out of two locations, one in one state and one in DC. You have to be able to potentially have built infrastructure on your own like person. So you have to be able to have like multiple laptops, Wi-Fi, the whole nine. Have to have a car or the ability to fly, all of that. So you're not going into this position generally with no money. And oftentimes you'll see that individuals who are politicians have connections to businesses. And they're usually not like, I own the mom and pop store down the street. It's usually like, I own a Dollar General, or I own a Walmart, or I own something. And through the process of buying and selling goods, you're able to develop relationships with merchandisers through an economic process called global value chains. And you are able to start exporting and importing goods directly to your business or to the larger system of businesses through countries. And one of the spaces that the US typically operates through in the Middle East is Israel. Not only as like we bring in goods from Israel, but we ship too. And so as you become, if let's say you start out, you own like a Walmart somewhere, you're probably bringing in some goods, whether it be produce or manufactured items from Israel. And then as you get into government, people will see that and start lobbying to you to support business endeavors within that country. And let's say, even if you get in and you have no connections to Israel, but you're a business owner, you will still likely be lobbied to export or import from those areas. And then let's say your constituents are super supportive of Israel and they want you to pursue this, then you'll do it to stay in office. And then a pattern continues of you being entrenched in that space, potentially going to visit the country, getting connected with government officials, businesses within the space, and then you further get embedded within that space and invest in those spaces. So it could start out very small, where let's just say like you become the representative of Hamilton County, Cincinnati, Ohio. You have a business, but you don't have connections to Israel, but people see that you're a business owner. And so business lobbying groups start to fund your campaign for reelection. And through that, you get connections to Israeli operated businesses or exporters or importers. And then you start, let's say 10 years down the line, you start to have opportunities to invest in those spaces. And so you generally won't see investment in Israel from like actual goods being put in or funding from for people who are like 2 terms in, 4 to 6 years in, but you'll definitely start to see it for people who are 10 plus years. If they're business owners and they're on like the House Foreign Relations Committee, if they've made ventures over to there, you'll see it a lot of times for what I would call like career politicians who've been in these spaces 10 plus years.
So is there any hope with like, or what's your advice on voting, like understanding how can we vote with a conscience?
Oh God, that's such a good question. Voting is so hard for me right now. I would say just read what people support and who funds them. Again, follow the money. Who funds you? So for me, voting is very difficult right now because there are a lot of politicians who historically I have voted for who support Israel. And I didn't know that until this dynamic came out. And so then it becomes a question of like, are there other changes that you want to see in the world that you are willing to support, even though this politician supports Israel? And I think that's a dynamic that's starting to happen in the United States, where especially within like democratic and progressive spaces, people are saying, yes, I support climate change bills. Yes, I support affordable housing. Yes, I support affordable healthcare. No, I don't support the tacit funding of Israel. And so then you have to say, am I going to vote for this person? Or is the alternative of like, we get someone who doesn't support those first 3 things? And I don't really have an answer because it's a question I'm personally struggling with as well. But I would say, again, see who's funding who and then you have to start making those value judgments yourself of like, am I committed to all of these other things, even if this one thing isn't how I want it to be, given that the alternative could be I get nothing. And I think there's no right answer. I think you could say, yeah, I'm supportive of all of that, and I'm willing to accept that like this person doesn't agree with my position on Palestine and Israel. Or you could say, no, my vote is a protest vote, where I am not doing this because you support Israel in this dynamic between Palestine and Israel. But I don't have a solid answer.
Yes,
in better terms,
yes,
from what I gathered, is that we need politicians that do not support Israel in the US, basically.
I just got it to my social media, but I don't know, like, because I haven't watched any of his speech before, but it's Cornel West, if you familiar with the person.
Isn't
He
he,
also
isn't
run,
he independent?
yeah, I think he come from the independent, Cornel West. He's a human rights activist, but he said like no tax dollar for bombing civilians. Let's maybe get to know more him then later.
Away from politics.
Away
Do
from
you guys believe? Yeah. Do you guys believe
a bit,
in the state of Israel?
Okay, can you repeat, Ilham, your question?
My question is, away from politics, I'm talking to my Christian fellows here. Do you believe in the state of Israel?
Should we ask everyone?
Still
Should
politics.
everyone give their answer? Okay. Who wanna
All
go
right,
first?
sounds good. I don't mind that. No one wants to answer? Okay,
No, I can go first. I mean,
sure, go ahead.
first, again, I never have any problem with the people, with the Jewish people living in Holy Land, which should be it should be. So I really support the coexistence between Christian, the Jewish, and then the Muslims living there. And it was Jerusalem is city for them, and Israel. If we, I don't know, I try to look up the meaning of Israel from the biblical perspective and then also the Quranic perspective. It's really beautiful name. According to the Quranic perspective, is name of Jacob, which is the person who prayed to God in the middle of the night, and then yeah, it's just the love of God, a person who loved God. That's Israel, and again, when we talk about the government, and then with what they have been showing all this like 75 years, and yeah, that's where I kind of like I can accept what they've been doing. Like all this, okay, it's fine. They want to live there together, coexistence. This is their land too. But then, yeah, all this performance after 75 years ruling the region, it's there's no peace. It's just cycle of war. It used to be Fatah back then. Hamas wasn't there before, but then it's here we are. So it's
But
I don't really answer the questions, but then again,
Yeah.
I just disagree with all the government that have been ruling the region for like 75.
Okay,
yeah, but
thank
it's
you for
like
your answer.
when it said like the settlers or people who were not there before 1948 have to go back to their country. It's hard to, right? We can't even think where they have to go because we can imagine they already built their life there. But it's like because the mindset that they have, like it's very hard for them to live together because they, I don't know, it's kind of brainwash or what is it called, but it's like they already believe they are different to others, even, yeah, so it's very hard for them to live together. Maybe two-state solution maybe is so hard to imagine if it's again the decision is two-state solution and then build another wall or something because they already have the mindset that they are different. It's
Okay.
very hard, but yeah, that's what I think. What do you think, Stefan?
No. I mean, physically it exists, right? We live in a world where it exists. Do I think that back in 1917, when the British like worked with the Jewish Legion to develop the conquest of Palestine and develop a state that like this is what was intended and Israel was supposed to be developed as it is? No, I don't think so. I think it was remnants of a colonial history where they were like, let's just shove these two people together and make it work. Which again dictated by the British government after the end of the Ottoman Empire. And we talk about like 1948, but even before that, the League of Nations, I think in 1920, developed the Mandate of Palestine, where the Jewish people were put as like overseers of the Palestinian government after working with the British government to kind of push the Palestinian population towards the sea. So do I think the state of Israel exists? I mean, in the most basic sense, yeah, it exists, it's there. But do I think it should have existed or come into existence the way that it did? No, because I think it came into existence in a way of colonizing and conquering, which was again dictated into being this relationship that there's no way it would have worked. It's not possible. Because it's like you're forcing two people to share a house and they don't know each other. They've not existed in the same space. And you say, we don't have space on the neighborhood for you to have another house. So we're going to force you two to split this house down the middle. You stay on your side, they stay on their side and don't have any problems. And if you do have problems, we'll come in and resolve those problems for you. You don't even get to have a say. So no, I don't think the state of Israel as exists right now is what was intended, nor do I think it's healthy. I think it is what majority Western countries developed as a way to make it make sense for them.
But speaking of like the Western colonialism, I always had this thing with the Western colonialism. Like if you analyze the whole history of Western, like the world, what the West tries to do is like they go to a place, they don't acknowledge the people in that place, and they start discriminating, and they think themselves they are superior, and they take over, and they try to eradicate those people if they resisted, right? But if you go to the Arab history, we find like, for example, Morocco. Morocco had their own natives, right? And the Arabs came to Morocco. To this day, like the Arabs came to Morocco like 1,000 years ago. And to this day, Morocco has like 80 or like 80% of Moroccans are natives, still natives, but still like Arabic. It's like a good mix of, like, it's like the definition of like conquering but not killing people. That's like, this is like a hard evidence like on how like the West versus the Arab colonialism, like when Arabs came in like to didn't eradicate everyone like you did here in the Americas. They turned to and they kept their population and they in peace. And this is rooted in Arab, this is rooted in Islam and the teachings of Islam. Like teaching of Islam doesn't tell you like the rules of Islam doesn't tell you to go kill innocent people. And Islam has these things that has like it has this thing that like in the Islam and the Quran has the non-Muslim who lives in the Muslim lands is called mu'ahad, which means like protected, right? So this is rooted. Meanwhile, in the West, they had their crusades, and from the crusades turned to Britain, and they still like went to the South and North Latin America, and they spread their like Christianity with force, and they didn't acknowledge the Native Americans. I think that's similar to Israel, how British people put Israel people, the mindset that put Israel people to not acknowledge Palestinians.
Exactly the answer I was looking for.
Yeah,
To be honest with you, I was literally looking for that answer. It's just because when I took Middle Eastern history at UC, we were taught like a book written by a Jewish person, and he said that Jews in East European countries and also in West European countries were literally burned alive, taken advantage of, and also taken away from their homes simply because they are Jewish. So they started making groups and little like kind of like I don't know. It's not a group thing. It's like making big families.
Militia
Yeah,
group.
making big families saying that they're not Jewish, but they are actually Jewish, and then they made it into the government of each of these countries, and then they decided to reunite as one in Europe, and then ask for a piece of land from these countries. So it was the hatred and the mistreatment that they got from European countries that led them to be this messed up in a way. So that's why that's why I was asking, from a religious perspective, do you guys believe in the state of Israel? Like, why can't we just be one? Like, in many other countries, we have Morocco, for example. We have so many Jews. We protected Jews from the little guy with the mustache. What's his name? Hitler. Yes. We
It
protected
goes
them
way
from
back
him.
then, Hitler, though. Like in
Yeah,
Morocco,
but we protected them from him. We have us also like our Christian fellows, and we never really like we actually celebrated their holidays. We've always done that. You see that also in Algeria. You see that also in Tunisia. You see that most of the time in Saudi Arabia, which is very, surprising for so many Christians. They don't mind because we were raised or we were taught by our prophets to always, always honor other religions. I don't see that a lot in the Western world, which is surprising. And yet they are the one who created the UN. I'm I'm very shocked and like out of words when it comes to that because this realization just made me just out of words and shocked and disappointed in the Western world. We always looked up to the Western world. We thought that they're the Democrats and we're like the dumb people. But ended up when I grew up, I found out that we were the right ones and they were literally feeding us lies. So I just want to know from a religious perspective whether you guys believe in just living together in peace with all other religions, or it's good that Jewish people have a state of their own. That's why I asked this question.
Yeah. I think it's back to the answer we said before, like it's not easy because they already have their own mindset on how the other is different. That is very difficult. But like for us, maybe I don't know, like for we said like they are Muslim extremists as well. They are Christian extremists, they are Jewish extremists, but we see many Jews like also us, even like we watched the video that when his brother was killed, that he believed like is his brother during the Hamas attack, but he believed that if his brother is still alive, his brother will also support for peace, because after he learned the Torah, because they start learning really the religion, because after they really learn the religion, they believe that Palestinian people are not different to them. So now it's like if we watch a lot of video, a lot of young Israel still really think that they need to kill all Palestinians. A lot we still see that, but a lot of them still already learned that it's not right to kill anyone. Yeah, I think this word will change. But how about Ukraine? Now, I'm interesting because like I don't really follow up after Biden and Zelensky meeting the last time. I don't think he gave any more funding for Ukraine in the future. I think Ukraine will be free from war. Do you think? Answer?
Maybe Anzor can answer.
You think like your friend in your country now that is still living in Ukraine see the war will be ending soon?
If you say stop donate Ukraine, war will be end soon.
Yeah, so
So Anzor is really interesting. I mean, just because I've been discussing with this a little bit with him, but because there is a little bit difference between the Western Ukrainian and an Eastern Ukrainian, which is where he's from. So he has a little bit of unique views about the Ukrainian and Russian war. Go, Anzor, please.
Please question.
do you think the Ukraine will be the war in Ukraine will be ending soon? Do you think?
I said that if USA and Europe stop donate, war ended soon because Russian grow up war factories.
Okay.
And he no, they have not big resource for that.
So Russian have big resource for war. If the Ukraine receive no more funding from European and America, maybe the war in Ukraine will stop.
And now in Ukraine, people catch in street and send in front of line of war.
People in Ukraine want to stop war, but many people still no back to the country, right? I haven't heard that much war anymore in the Ukraine. I mean, like the news is no longer I don't know, maybe I'm not following it that much recently. It's like no longer said like so many people killed, so many people depart have to move from their land. So now already like people already settle somewhere else, and then like it's just like in army, the war in Ukraine. Yeah. Any more question, or we already talked? I mean, like almost 1.5 year, half year, no, half hours. So maybe we can have another meeting in another discussion. It's very interesting what Ilham has brought to today about like how actually the solution that we can find, actually we can't suggest any solution because here we just discussing, we show our perspective, we share our opinion, but like politics is what is the word, like it's so difficult to talk about politics. Maybe later if we meet again we will.
Can I ask one more questions to answer a little bit, just as for the last?
Okay.
Because I'm with this situation right now, I look more the picture of like Arabic Christian and also maybe the Eastern Christian. So I'm really interested to at least know some like views about the conflict in Holy Land according to the Orthodox Christian. What do you think, answer? Well, what was the general public opinion
in Ukraine?
In Ukraine, Russian, or the Orthodox Christian community? Because I don't see many people are talking about this, especially from, because maybe I'm just don't get exposed too much with the people from Orthodox.
Community Orthodox in Ukraine in Muslim.
Say that again. So
Orthodox
what is
communicate in Muslim in Ukraine and
no, it's just the opinion from Orthodox Christian about the conflict in Israel and Palestine, between Israel and Palestine.
My view about this question is bad. I just looking for this situation, but I see that Hamas Hamas answer that Jews all time from 1948 attack him, and Hamas protect for his land.
Yeah, I mean, like, it actually remind me a little bit about our discussion, my discussion with Stephen. We were sitting together, like, in front of our department, like, we talk in the small table, like, we thought no one hear our conversation. We talk about the situation, how Stephen find difficulty to explain to even his friends, out of nowhere, one of Palestinian Christian overheard our conversation. That was like shocking. Like, how can like we talk like, oh, then the girl said, I'm sorry, I overheard your conversation. And he said, I was a Christian, I was a Palestinian. It's so hard for me myself. I came to the church every day. I and my family came to the church to explain that we are Christian, we are also oppressed there. But no one believed that. Stephen also tried to tell about his perspective to his Christian friends. So maybe you can share a little bit before we close, Stephen.
Yeah, and I think
also one last question, because I'm really
Yeah.
interested with what type of Christian possibly in Palestine, because the more I look into the situation that the Christian there, I think it is closer to the Eastern European or the Orthodox Christian compared to the Western Christian or Christian that I used to know. That's actually my question to answer, and then yeah, because I see more similarities towards this Christian domination, the Orthodox Christian, rather than the Western Christian.
Please, Stephen.
Oh, I think like with many countries, the Christian community in Palestine is diverse. Like the church, the denomination I'm a part of has a Lutheran church or they partner with a Lutheran church that is very similar to ours in Palestine, but also one in Jordan. So there are many that are like very similar to Eastern European practices, but also there are some that are similar to like US practices or Latin American practices. It's just which ones do you see? Usually we see the more Orthodox practices in those spaces. And I think Yenny's point connects to Ilham's question earlier about the almost like existing in the same space and believing in the state of Israel, because we've conflated like being Jewish means you're Israeli, being Christian means you're Western, being Muslim means you're Palestinian, which is just not true. And so I think like in that sense, no, like I would not conflate Israel and Judaism together, and therefore I wouldn't support the state of Israel as it's understood in that sense. But I think the issue for me when it comes to talking to different Christian communities is that within Christianity, there are so many different sects, and there are some that acknowledge that Palestine and Palestinians have a history with Israel that goes decades, almost over a century now, actually. And so they view this engagement between the two states as, oh, it just started like October 7th of this year, which is just not true. And because of that lack of understanding about the history, they see it as like, well, Hamas started it. So if Hamas started it, then the Israeli government has a right to fight back. But that's just not true. And we all know it's not true. We've had that conversation here. And so in order to engage in conversations with people generally, but even people within religious spaces, it requires a little bit of nuance to say like, it's a great starting point that this brought your awareness, but also let's talk about the past 100 years. And oftentimes people don't care enough to hear about that. They care to have their solution brought to them, and the answer be just as straight as Hamas started it, Israeli government has a right to fight back. Mm-hmm. And it's more complicated than that. And so I think within religious spaces as well, we have Christian spaces, we have people who read things very literally, like the Bible is read very literally. And therefore it's like, oh, well, it says Israel and it says Israel on the map that I have up in my office or whatever, therefore they're the same thing, which is not true. It's not true. The Israel we talk about in the Bible is not the same as the state that was established in 1948. And so that creates complications because you're going into the conversation with different understandings, different experiences. And just like I started a little bit of my background with saying that like my denomination has had a statement on Israel and Palestine since 1989 and a statement on international peace since 1995. Other denominations don't, and likely will never. And so some of my friends are part of those groups. And so to even add the nuance of saying, Palestine is not Hamas, and Hamas is not all Palestinians, just as the Israeli government does not speak for all Jewish people who exist within Israel.
Right.
Even getting that nuance creates complication because you require for them to be willing to reach beyond their own box of understanding to say like, oh, maybe I've thought too simply about these things, and maybe I've made judgments too quickly. And I think that's a problem with people generally, but it's very difficult within Christian communities who might have said like, well, I read it in the Bible and you can't challenge what I perceive it to be. And the Israel talked about in the Old Testament must be what the UN decided in 1948, and therefore we have to support them no matter what happens. And it goes back to Sufyan's point earlier about the Amaleks. People would read that, hear what Netanyahu said, and then be like, well, it's in the Bible, so we have to agree. And that's just not how all Christian groups see it. And that's not how my denomination within Christianity sees it. And so when I have conversations with friends who practice different denominations, it already creates barriers to understanding just at how we interpret the text, our sacred text, and how we choose to see that informs the way we live in the world and how we talk about people in the world and who we support, who we don't support.
Right. Yeah, that's also maybe like the same like Ali and Stephen maybe will have very similar experience like when you're like people around you don't have the same perspective with you. It's like very hard to explain to everyone that already have this, the same like what we talked before, like they already have their own mindset that it's very hard to change what they already believe. Okay, maybe that's all for today. We will meet again. Inshallah, we will plan for another meeting. For maybe we will focus more into interfaith discussion. I know everyone here very interested in like the discussion about interfaith, like how our Torah, I mean like our religious scripture talk about the live on
Each
earth.
other. Yeah.
With each other, so that maybe we will meet again next time. So I stop here from here, but anyone want to make a closing remark or closing? Anyone, please, before we say goodbye. Anyone want to say anything?
I think this meeting has just proved that we're all humans, and we believe in human rights, which is something I appreciate about each one of you guys. And I hope to see you at the next meeting.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, that's from me, the same one too. I hope to see you again, and we have a very peaceful discussion here that really can bring us more knowledge and
We
can.
need blacks. We don't have blacks people here, so.
we
Well, I am African, so
No,
there you go.
you're not. No, I have some friends. I'll chat to them, and then we'll see if
Sure.
they're interested to come. Yeah, the Nigerian fellows are really like peaceful, and they also kind of mix between the Christian and the Muslims. Yeah, interesting.
That's
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Okay, we close here. Thank you so much for everyone. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brian. You have good answers. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, Sufyan.
Bye.